So what we're going to do now is we're going to start off by talking about loss and grief. And you're probably thinking, you've got to be kidding me. You're here, first time at this group with a bunch of people that you don't know, with me, don't know me, and I'm asking you to talk about loss and grief. But it's actually really important that we do start at that place. You know, I think it's a really difficult situation that all of you are in, whatever, for better or for worse. I'm not making a judgment about that. But when you got married, you never actually imagined that you were going to be sitting here in a post-separation parenting course. So I think it's really important that we just acknowledge that and that we start off there and, you know, just put that out there. So what I want to do is just think about loss and grief. And often when people talk about loss and grief, people in the community talk about loss and grief, what they do is they talk about sort of, you know, there's an event and then there's a period of time and then everything's okay. It's sort of this linear kind of way of looking at it. And so something happens and then you might go through, you know, different things like, you know, shock and disbelief, maybe some anger, maybe they move to bargaining, and eventually to this place called acceptance. And really, a lot of people kind of talk about that in that sort of linear fashion and sort of get to this point where, you know, they think everything's going to be okay. Usually people who haven't experienced a significant loss in their lives, they kind of think like that, you know. It's like you go through that whole first year, you know, first year of anniversaries and significant dates and all of those kinds of things. And once you've been through that, then everything kind of is okay. I think that's a lot of people in society sort of think that. Would you agree? Yeah. Well, we think about it a little bit differently than that. So I'm just going to get rid of that. And what I want you to do now is I just want you to take a moment. You can close your eyes or look on the floor just so that you don't have any distractions. And I want you to take a moment and think about that time when the separation happened. And that time when you realised that your dreams for family life had gone and that maybe your future was going to look a little bit different. So just take some time. And when you're ready, just look up and just so that I know that you've got that. For some of you, it might be an event, or it might be a sort of series of events. Okay, so I'm going to start off, and I'm just going to start off by telling a story. And then I'm going to hand it over to you for you to take over, for you to start telling your story. Okay. So that time that we were just thinking about then is just for the sake of a shared language, just for today, so we all know what we're talking about. It's symbolised by this, and we're going to call that the black hole. Just for, you know, you can call it whatever you like, but for today, and we're just going to refer to it as that. Now, so let's imagine that what's happened is that you've had this huge row with your ex-partner or your partner, and they've left. They've gone out the door, they've packed a bag, they've slammed the door, and you're like, oh, actually this is it. I know that we've had a lot of this going on, but this is it. Or maybe you're the one who's left. But it's like, oh, this isn't just an argument, this is kind of the end. And so maybe you're sitting there going, oh my goodness me, and then after a little while you're like, oh, I think I need to talk to somebody about that. Maybe I need to talk to someone. So maybe you ring, you know, like your mum or your dad or a sibling or your best mate or whoever it is. And you sort of get to them on the phone and you talk to them. And as you talk to them, you've sort of been able to gather yourself enough to make the phone call, and then it's just overwhelming again. So then it's like, okay, what does this what does this actually mean? What does this mean that this is, our relationship has ended, so do I need to talk to the kids? How, you know, what do I actually do about that? You know, just talking to the kids. So you're thinking that, and it's like, and as you think about that, it takes you back into that black hole. And then maybe, you know, you go to bed and you sort of, you know, lie and you sleep in it, and the next morning it's like, okay, well, I do actually need to, you know, I don't know, get some groceries, actually get some food in the house or something. So you're going to the supermarket, and as you go to the supermarket, you go past your local park, and it's a Saturday, and there's a whole bunch of families there just playing footy, and the kids are on their bikes, and you just realise that, oh my goodness me, this is actually changed. This is not happening. We're not that family, you know. And so then the weekend goes through and you're getting on with things and, you know, just doing whatever. And so, you know, it's Monday and it's like, oh, actually, I think maybe I need to speak to somebody about this, like somebody professional. Maybe I need to speak to a lawyer, or maybe go to one of those family relationship centres that I've sort of heard vaguely about. So it's like you've got to make these phone calls and find what you need to do legally, and so that takes you straight back into that black hole again. I'm wondering, that's just a story I'm kind of making up. I'm just wondering what your things are. What are the things that have happened in your life that take you straight back into that black hole?
The thing I get resentful about is that I wouldn't be going into the black hole if he hadn't gone off with that tart anyway in the first place. You were talking about promises, broken promises. Well, we made a promise when we went into that church.
And that can be really overwhelming, can't it? That feeling of, you know, we made this commitment, and it's overwhelming, and it's like, what do I do with it? So maybe the trigger is hearing about going to other people's weddings, or hearing other relationships, and actually that trigger is taking you back into the black hole as it reminds you of what's changed and what's lost.
It does, but it hurts me because me or the kids shouldn't even be going through this.
Yeah, and that's right. It can really hurt you. What about other people? What are some of the things that other people have experienced?
Saturday morning sport, because he always took them.
Yeah.
He always took the kids.
Yeah, Saturday morning sport. Yeah. And what do you do? How do you work that out?
My son's birthday's coming up, and you know, what do we do there? Does she come along, or
wow,
you know, I don't want her there.
Yeah, that's a really big question. Those family celebrations. So it's not just birthday, is it? It's like it's birthdays. It's, you know, it's Christmas. Maybe it's Ramadan. All of those special family occasions that we've been used to doing in one way, and now trying to get our heads around how we do it differently. What other people? What other things have you experienced?
Even sort of living arrangements, like what do we do on the weekends?
Yeah.
Where do they stay? What do we do?
Absolutely. Just organising those parenting arrangements.
Knowing that my kids are going and staying with her and him outside of my house.
Yeah. Yeah. And that can just, get you. It's like a knife.
Getting called into the kids' school because they've not been managing this real well.
Right,
yeah.
Right. Okay.
For me, it's like I've now got to go get a job.
Okay.
And then my kids are going to miss me, and then I have to get up. It's just so hard.
Sure. How are you going to just handle huge changes? And that can really impact on your confidence as you know, think about work and And actually, but also just that practicality of how do you find a job that's going to be in school hours, or, you know, just how do you work all of the practicalities of life?
I just feel so angry and annoyed at the kids when they're just wanting to talk about how great Dad is and miss Dad, and he's a pig. So
yeah.
I just wish they would realise that it's all his fault anyway.
Yeah.
Like, don't make out that he's so great.
Yeah. So it can be really hard when the kids have got this different relationship with the other parent than you have. Okay, so what I want you to do now is I want you to just project yourself a little bit into the future and think about your kids as they're moving into adolescence. Some of you don't have to imagine that because I know that your kids are there. But moving into sort of adolescence, late adolescence, what do you think the triggers might be when they are starting relationships and those kinds of things? So into the future now.
Like, I think I'm really scared that I'm going to miss out on those times, you know, where your kids tell you stuff, you know, like, what about when my boy gets his first girlfriend? Like, is he going to tell me, or is he going to tell Dad? And, you know, and then what about, you know, then he's going to get married and like have a wedding and have babies and stuff. And that just makes me so scared.
It's huge, isn't it? So let's get that up here. So we've got, you know, first boyfriends and girlfriends and, you know, weddings. And who sits where at the wedding? How are they going to do that? Are both parents going to be invited, you know? You know, for the dads, are you going to be able to walk your daughters down the aisle? Big questions.
I really struggle with knowing what's being said at like him being a good role model, because I don't really feel like he is.
Yeah.
And so he's wanting to be, you know, the best mate rather than the dad, and so feeling like I've got to do his job as well as my own.
So working out those changed roles.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how's that going to work? And how's that going to work into the future?
For me, I'm finding similar. Like, I am always the one who's being the grown up, and he's the fun one. And you know, he cheated, but I'm the one who enforced it at the end.
Yeah.
So I'm the bad guy, and I'm the one who's doing the discipline, and I'm just worried that I'm going to be the one that they blame, and then he's the great one that's all, you know.
And that's that frustration around those change roles. So let's keep this thinking about as into the future. So Kate, I know that you've sort of said that boyfriend, you know, weddings and those kinds of things. You know, what about maybe if your kids say to you something like, I'm actually never going to get married because I saw the mess that you and Dad or you and Mum made of your life, so I'm never going to get married. Do you think that might be a trigger?
Absolutely, that would break my heart.
Yeah. Or if they said, I'm never going to have kids because you and Mum or you and Dad, you stuffed us up. Wow. That's big stuff for the kids, isn't it? It's a lot to think about.
I know that you're only allowed to have a couple of people at the graduation when you at uni, and I'm wondering which mum is going to get invited.
Wow, that's a really big one, isn't it? That graduation. And do you have a right? Are you going to have a right to be at those rites of passages for your kids? These are really, really big things to think about for the future.
And who gets to be the nana?
Who gets to be the nana? How do you manage all of those? That's right. Because it's not just about you two, isn't it? It's about this extended family as well. We call this the butterfly model of loss and grief. I guess one of the things to think about is that, you know, the thing about butterflies is that they start off as these caterpillars, kind of crawling along. And then at some point, I have no idea how, they go into these chrysalises. And chrysalises, I don't know whether anybody's ever seen one or seen a picture of them, but they're kind of ugly. They're kind of lumpy and brown and messy and stuff. But something happens within that chrysalis. And what happens is that this transformation is happening as this butterfly, this caterpillar changes into this butterfly, and it sort of pushes and tears away at the chrysalis, and eventually this butterfly comes out. So there's this really kind of ugly start, but in that ugliness there's transformation. And what naturalists and biologists would say is that if we were to have like a butterfly, like a chrysalis here in front of us, and we could see it moving, and we thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to help this butterfly. I'm going to tear it open so it can get out. I'm going to give it a hand. What they actually tell us is that, in fact, because that butterfly hasn't struggled to get out of that chrysalis, they're not going to be able to fly, and they're going to die. Now you might be sitting there thinking, what is she going on about? We're talking about butterflies and chrysalises, and we've got this whole thing on the board. But here's the thing. There's this beautiful transformation that happens in a chrysalis with all of this work that happens, and there's beauty in this butterfly. And here you've got this really kind of ugly black hole in the middle, and actually this can become quite beautiful, because what happens is that when you become aware of what your triggers are and what presses your buttons, actually you can do something about it. Because often when we get triggered by something, or there's something presses our buttons, we kind of do this behaviour that might be all over the place. We might yell at someone, or we might retreat and isolate ourselves, or whatever. But when we actually understand that, I'm feeling like that because of this, because of my black hole. I get it. I get why Saturday mornings are really difficult, because Saturday mornings is all about Saturday sport, and I get what that's about. So once you understand what your triggers are, you can do something about it. And that is beautiful, because it means that you're not just doing stuff. You're not just getting angry or getting sad or depressed or losing it with people, but you're actually understanding where that sits and what that means for you. And you can say, it's my butterfly flapping its wings. And I'm not saying that something out here like weddings and new babies and things like that, the pain out here, that butterfly flapping its wings out here, is as painful as this one where you got on the phone to your mum or your best mate. It's not the same, but it's still there, and it's still this butterfly flapping its wing. But here's the thing that's really beautiful about the butterfly, is understanding that our children have got butterflies. And if we're able to understand that our children have got butterflies, if we're able to understand that this that has happened, the relationship that has broken down, for better, for worse, I'm not making a judgment about that, but because your child is no longer growing up in an intact family, just because of that, they've got their own butterfly. Some of us have got lots of butterflies because we've had really hard lives. It's not just about the separation. Sometimes it's just about life, and for your kids as well. But here's the thing, if you know that your butterfly, you know that your little one has got a butterfly, and that your little one's butterfly wings flap as well. And if you're more aware of your own triggers, it means that you're aware of what these triggers might be for your little one. Now, sometimes when your little one's butterfly wings flap, they cause yours to flap as well, because it's like, oh, I don't want my child to be feeling that pain. But actually, what it means you can do is you can say, you know what, I'm the grown-up, I'm the parent. I can see that my little one's butterfly wings are flapping. And it makes mine flap, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put mine over here for a minute. I'm just going to put it there. And I'm going to go over here and I'm going to work and I'm going to support, I'm going to deal with my child. I'm going to connect with my child and I'm going to help them work out their butterfly. And then when they're okay, I'm going to go back, I'm going to pick up mine and I'm going to get some help around it. And so what you might be doing is maybe talking to a friend or talking to a counsellor or, you know, whatever it might be to actually be able to hold your butterfly and understand what that's all about. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. All right. Thank you.